Aquarius. There are moments in life when everything on the outside seems to move exactly as it always has, and yet, inside you, something has already begun to shift. You still walk the same familiar roads. You still hear the quiet rhythm of an ordinary day, but the feeling, it doesn't land the same anymore. It's like a thought that never quite turned into words, a feeling that hasn't been fully named, and somehow, in its own quiet way, it's still there, waiting for you to notice. You're not rushing. You don't feel the need to figure it out right away. It's just a very subtle presence, slowing you down, even if only for a few seconds. And then, in a moment that feels completely ordinary, you catch yourself wondering, could this quiet shift inside you be trying to open a conversation, one you've been putting off for a very long time? That there are things in life that don't need a clear signal to begin. No invitation, no perfect timing like people often wait for. Just a feeling that's hard to name. An afternoon passes like any other day. Light still falls across familiar corners. The sounds of the world move in their usual rhythm. And yet, inside you, something has quietly shifted. Not big, not dramatic, just enough for you to notice. You're no longer standing in the same place within yourself. You still carry your calm. You still think clearly, still observe the world in your own distinct way. But somewhere within all that logic, a space begins to open. A space that doesn't need to be filled right away. It's simply there. And you begin to realize you don't want to avoid it anymore. Not because you've become more sensitive, not because you're lacking something. Maybe it's just a part of you is ready to be more honest about the things you once brushed past, honest about a feeling you thought didn't need to stay, or honest about a connection you never allowed yourself to fully look into. You don't rush to name it. You don't try to turn it into a complete story. You just begin to notice silence is no longer a place to hide, but a place to listen. And in that listening, thoughts begin to surface. Very gently. Questions that don't need answers right away. Memories that pass like a soft breeze. Feelings that once seemed distant, returning in a completely different way. Like standing by the ocean on a windless day. The surface so still, it feels like everything has paused. But underneath, currents are still moving. You begin to sense that, not through logic, but through a quiet, gentle awareness. You don't need to know where this is leading you. You don't need to decide whether to move forward or not. Just recognizing that something inside you no longer wants to be overlooked is enough. And maybe what truly matters here is not what you will say or what you will do next, but the fact that you pause long enough to notice a conversation is beginning to form within you. A conversation that doesn't come from outside pressure, not from anyone's expectations, but from you, a deeper version of yourself, more honest, less guarded. And as you begin to stay with that feeling, without avoiding it, without rushing it, simply being present, you may start to notice something very subtle. Some conversations in life don't need words to begin, and yet, they can still change the way you see everything, from the very moment you allow yourself to truly listen. You may have tried to move a little faster, filling your days with work, plans, thoughts that need to be solved. You keep your mind busy, keep your schedule full, as if, by not slowing down, those feelings would quietly fall behind. And in some way, that approach worked, at least for a while. You analyze things clearly, you understand why you feel the way you do. You put everything in its place, give it a reasonable name, and tell yourself, everything is fine. But then, there are small moments when the world around you slows down. A quiet evening, a piece of music that unexpectedly touches a memory, or simply a few seconds without distraction. And you feel it again. Not stronger, not clearer, but still there. Like something unfinished, a sentence never spoken, a feeling that hasn't fully lived its way through. And you begin to realize, not everything disappears just because you choose not to think about it anymore. Some feelings don't demand your attention right away. They don't pull you off balance. They don't stop your life in its tracks. They simply stay, quietly, patiently, like a current flowing deep beneath the ground. You don't see it every day, but you know it's still there. It doesn't rush, it doesn't push, it doesn't need to prove anything. And yet, in its own way, it always finds a path forward. And maybe, what unsettles you isn't the feeling itself, but the moment when you're no longer sure whether to keep ignoring it or begin to listen. Because listening sometimes means facing what isn't clear yet, no ready answers. Oh, no certain direction, just one simple truth. There is something within you that needs to be acknowledged, not to be changed immediately, not to be acted on right away, just to be seen. And slowly, you begin to understand. Feelings are not there to make you weaker. They're not something you have to control just to feel stable, maybe in a very quiet way. They're simply guiding you closer to the most honest part of yourself. And when you stop pushing them away, stop trying to explain them or make sense of them too quickly, you begin to notice something. When feelings are truly listened to, they don't make life more complicated. They just make it more real. You've grown used to understanding the world in your own way, clear, structured, a place where everything can be analyzed, taken apart, seen from different angles, until you feel you've reached its core. You don't get carried away by emotions easily. You observe them, name them, place them where they seem to belong, and then you keep moving forward. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it has carried you through many moments in life with a kind of quiet strength that not everyone can see. But then, there comes a point when that way of understanding no longer feels like enough. Not because it's wrong, but because something is happening that doesn't fully belong to logic. Not big, not sudden, just a very subtle shift in how you feel about a person, a memory, or even yourself. You could still explain it if you wanted to, but this time, you don't feel the need to rush into that. Because you begin to notice, there are things that, the more you try to understand them through logic, the further away they seem to become. And instead of getting closer, you find yourself creating distance. So, you pause, not to search for an answer, but simply not to miss what you're feeling. Maybe, for the first time in a long while, you allow yourself not to figure it out right away. You don't need to define this feeling. You don't need to know where it's going. You don't need to check if it makes sense. You just stay. Inside a moment that doesn't need clarity. Inside a feeling that hasn't been named. And something interesting begins to happen. When you stop trying to control it, everything starts to feel a little lighter. Not because it's been resolved, but because you're no longer resisting it. You begin to sense a different kind of language, not one that comes from thought, but from a very subtle movement within you. It doesn't speak in words, it doesn't offer conclusions, and yet it shows you things. What gently opens you, what quietly makes you close off without even noticing, what makes you want to stay a little longer, even when you can't explain why. And maybe this is the moment your heart begins to speak in its own way. Not loudly, not forcefully, not asking you to change all at once. Just a soft reminder that there are parts of you that don't need to be understood in order to exist. They only need to be felt. You're not losing your logic. You're not becoming someone else. You're simply opening another door where you don't just live by what you know, but also by what you truly feel. And as you begin to listen in that way, without trying to control, without trying to define, you may come to realize something very simple, yet not always easy to accept. Not everything meaningful in life needs to be fully explained. Some things, when felt deeply enough, are already enough to change the way you see everything. And as you arrive here, after moving through feelings you couldn't quite name, after sitting with a kind of silence that no longer feels the same as before, you may begin to notice questions forming within you, very natural, very human. Should I say something? Does this really mean anything? And if I take one more step, where would it lead me? You're not asking because you're weak. You're asking because you're beginning to care. Not just about someone else, but about your own experience. And somewhere in the middle of all those questions, you start to sense something subtle. Not every conversation exists to bring you to a clear answer. Some conversations don't begin just to end. They're not here to define what's right or wrong. not here to label a relationship, not here to be figured out so you can move on. They simply open. They open a space you may have never stepped into before, a space where you don't have to be so guarded, where you don't have to appear certain, where you don't have to control everything you feel. You begin to notice yourself slowing down when you think about it, feeling lighter, when you allow it to exist without forcing it into anything, not because things have become clearer, but because you're no longer trying to make them clear. And in that space of not needing clarity, something very gentle appears. You are becoming more honest with yourself, honest about feelings you once brushed past, honest about emotions you once thought weren't worth keeping, and honest about the fact that there are softer parts of you, even if you're not used to showing them. This doesn't make you weaker. If anything, it opens a different kind of strength, a steadiness that doesn't come from control, but from acceptance. You don't need to hold on to someone for this feeling to have value. You don't need to define a relationship for it to mean something. Because some things, their meaning lives in the experience itself, not in the outcome. And when you allow a conversation to exist without needing it to go anywhere, you may begin to feel a very unfamiliar kind of freedom. An freedom from having to understand everything, freedom from having to decide right away, freedom from the pressure to turn a feeling into something concrete. What remains is just you. And one simple truth: you are feeling. And this time, you don't want to hide it anymore. Not to prove anything, not to reach a conclusion, but simply so you don't overlook yourself in the middle of this journey. And sometimes, just having the courage to stay with that feeling is already an answer, even if it's never spoken out loud. And when you've stayed with that feeling long enough, not rushing it, not avoiding it, you may begin to notice something you hadn't seen before. That courage doesn't always take the form of big decisions. It's not always about saying everything out loud in a clear, decisive way. It's not always about stepping forward with a certain answer in your hands. There are other kinds of courage, softer, slower, easier to overlook. It's the moment you allow yourself to feel, without needing to label it right away. You don't rush to call it right or wrong. You don't try to analyze whether it makes sense. You don't force yourself to understand where it's leading. You just let it be there, more fully. And you begin to realize you don't have to control every emotion to keep your life steady. You don't have to push away what confuses you just to feel safe. Because maybe real safety doesn't come from avoiding what you feel, but from knowing you can stay with it without losing yourself. And that requires a very quiet kind of courage. No one sees it, no one applauds it, no one confirms it, but you know that this time, you're not turning away from your own feelings anymore. You're not closing the door just because you don't know what's on the other side. You stand there, between what isn't clear, between feelings that don't yet have a name, and you still choose to stay. Maybe you'll speak, maybe you'll keep it to yourself, but that choice no longer comes from fear. It comes from an understanding that you are listening to yourself more honestly than before. And in that listening, you begin to trust your own rhythm. You don't need to be like anyone else. You don't need to move faster. You don't need to be more certain. You just need to be more real. And maybe this is a kind of growth that not everyone recognizes right away. A kind of growth that doesn't come from what you achieve, but from how you stay with yourself in moments that are hard to name. It doesn't make a loud impact. It doesn't change everything overnight. But over time, it quietly reshapes the way you see your life. Softer, more open, less harsh on yourself. And when you reach this point, you may begin to realize something very simple. Courage is not about doing something extraordinary. It's about not leaving yourself in a moment when you once might have chosen to walk away. And as you move through all of this, not with urgency, but with a quiet, genuine presence, something begins to shift. Not loud, not obvious at first, but enough for you to feel that something within you is no longer the same. The world around you still looks the same. The familiar roads, the everyday conversations, the sounds, the rhythm of life, all continuing in their own way. And yet, The way you exist within it has changed. You don't react as quickly as before. You don't rush to find an answer for everything. Instead, a small pause begins to appear. A pause just long enough for you to notice what you're feeling before trying to understand it. And within that pause, you begin to see more clearly the things you once overlooked. Not because they were too small, but because you never gave yourself the time to truly stay with them. Now, you're no longer trying to control where everything is going. You don't need to know where this will lead. You don't need to decide what's right, what's wrong, what should be, or shouldn't be. You simply begin to realize something very simple. And yet, it changes the way you see everything. That feelings, when allowed to exist, don't make you lose your way. They help you understand yourself more deeply. You're no longer afraid of uncertainty the way you once were. You no longer see what isn't clear as something that needs to be solved right away. Because you begin to trust that some things need time to unfold, and you don't have to force them. And then, very naturally, another realization begins to take shape. If there is a conversation waiting for you, it may not be coming from someone else, not from someone out there waiting for you to say something, but from you, from a deeper part within you that has been waiting for a long time, to be heard without interruption. A part that doesn't need perfect explanations, doesn't need flawless logic, just a quiet enough space to exist. And this time, you don't turn away. You don't try to fill that silence with busyness or endless thoughts. You stay. You stay with yourself, in a way you may have never allowed before. Not to become someone else, but to understand more clearly who you've always been. And maybe the most beautiful part of all of this is not that you found an answer, but that you allowed a question to exist long enough to guide you closer to your own honesty. No rushing, no pressure, no need to be perfect, just a very real kind of listening. And in that listening, you begin to realize some journeys don't require you to go anywhere far. Sometimes moving closer to yourself is already a profound change.